man. Whose kids are those? Oh, man. The benefit of being a pastor's kid is you get voluntold into stuff like that. I remember growing up, my dad preached every Sunday, and where's the thing under here? Here we go. Getting involuntarily used in like every metaphor ever. You know, my dad would be like, hey, son, come up here. And he would use me as a story, like in front of everybody. I'm like, thanks, Dad. Appreciate that. But man, how was last weekend? Was it good having Nathan Finocchio in the house? Come on. Man, that was an incredible deposit into the life of our church. Man, just so excited to have him, and just the message that he brought was so helpful. So those are now live on our YouTube channel. You can go rewatch those many times. I encourage you to do that, especially Saturday. If you weren't able to be here Saturday, man, those are just packed full of just great tools and thoughts and methodologies for how to interpret Scripture and grow as a person, especially in such a heated day that we live in today. It's never been more important to dig down into why you believe what you believe, how we make sense of the world, and how Scriptures really build a foundation for us to live successfully in the world today, which is why we are going through the entire Bible in the year of 2026. Come on. Has this been good for you guys so far? Come on. It's been great. I've loved it, man. It's been a journey, and we are now in our second kind of chunk of the Bible. We started with the Pentateuch, the first 5 books. Now we're in the historical books, and I'm excited about the books we're going into today, 1st and 2nd Samuel. I got to tell you, it's a bit of a heavy lift to cover 2 massive books in one Sunday, all right? Now, when I was 12 years old in, 2000, my parents took us to see Star Wars Episode 1 in the theaters, you know, with the little kid and the pod racing. And we saw it midnight showing, 12 years old. It was like the best experience of my entire life. And I only later found out that the movie is unanimously hated by Star Wars fans. Apparently, kid's very annoying, you know. But as a 12-year-old, I was like, man, pod racing is sick. This is awesome, you know. And Star Wars was just super fun. Well, 1st and 2nd Samuel are like the Star Wars of the Old Testament, okay? If you have been wondering, like, man, what's the hype about? Like, we got stuck in Leviticus. That's a difficult read. Deuteronomy was, you know, halfway. Judges were a little chaotic. Ruth was nice. 1st and 2nd Samuel is like the heart. This is the Indiana Jones of the Bible. It's the Stranger Things of the Bible. Like, whatever your adventure story of choice is, 1st and 2nd Samuel is it. Okay, so you guys ready for your Bible breakdown this morning? Come on. Come on, let's go. Bible breakdown. I'm going to give you just some info. This is our kind of like 5 to 10 minute teaching portion of the message. We're going to give you an overview of the book, and then I'm going to pull a specific passage and really lean into it and preach out of that. Okay, so first, the author of 1st and 2nd Samuel, traditionally, it has Samuel's name on it, so we traditionally think it's Samuel. The problem is that a huge chunk of the book comes from after Samuel died, and so it's hard to know, you know, that it's hard to think he wrote it. Most likely, it was someone after the reign of David using historical records that probably Samuel did write some of those and compiled it into this history of the nation of Israel, maybe a court historian or something like that. The genre is that it is historical narrative. Genre matters because it helps you interpret what you are reading. Remember, like a movie, you interpret a drama differently than you interpret a comedy. You interpret infomercials different than you interpret a National Geographic documentary, right? And so genre really helps us interpret. If it's historical narrative, then we are intended to believe by the author that what he writes actually literally happened. He's not generally being metaphorical. He's saying, hey, I want you to believe the stuff I'm writing about actually happened, okay? So that helps us make sense of this. 1st and 2nd Samuel sits in the context of 4 other larger historical narratives, starting with Joshua, where the people of Israel take the promised land, moving into Judges, where, you know, they're kind of just lawless and chaos all over the place. 1st and 2nd Samuel is next, and then 1st and 2nd Kings complete the historical arc of the nation of Israel. Now, just a quick span of this historical arc is you got the promised land, they enter, Judges doesn't go so well, they ask for a king at the beginning of 1st and 2nd Samuel, so God gives them a king. Kings kind of are okay, some are really great, some are really bad. In fact, most of them end up being very bad, leading them into a lot of rebellion against God, so God starts ratcheting up the pain to try to get their attention, and eventually they don't care anymore, they just continue rebelling against God. And so God exiles them, allows the neighboring empire to take them over. Half the nation completely disappears. The other half eventually makes it back, limping, broken, and wondering about their future. And that is where this story kind of arc ends. And 1st and 2nd Samuel is right in the middle of that, where they ask for a king. And 1st and 2nd Samuel covers their first two kings. Okay? Now, these books, there are three main characters you want to pay attention to, and I'm going to lean into the Star Wars metaphor here. You've got David, Samuel, and Saul, the three main characters in these books. And in Star Wars language, okay, David is Luke Skywalker. He is, the iconic hero. He just has a heart after God, just wants to change the world. In fact, he grows up in the middle of nowhere and just kind of develops, his life, his character, and eventually he meets this old sage who teaches him the ways of God and who unlocks his future and acts as a guide moving him forward in this biblical account. That is Samuel the prophet, who is kind of our Obi-Wan character. Now, King Saul, I kind of went a few different ways. I was like, man, okay, like who, he's not, the emperor, he's Anakin Skywalker. He's Anakin Skywalker. He's the first king before David. He has a strong start, seems like the chosen one. He seems like, man, he's going to do an amazing job. And then because he gives in to his pride and his deep insecurities. Now, we all have insecurities, we all have pride, but he gives in to them and builds his life on them. He goes down the path of the dark side and becomes Darth Vader. And Luke Skywalker has to fight him, and bad things happen. Okay, that's kind of the gist of these characters. Now, there are some major themes in the books of 1st and 2nd Samuel. First, I want to tell you, these were originally one book. These were not two books, okay? These were written as one scroll called Samuel, but in the kind of 200s-ish BC, the Jews translated the Hebrew Bible into Greek and into this book called the Septuagint, and they just thought, man, this is too long. The book is no one's going to read this. It's too long, so they cut it in half. And say, here's part one, here's part two. But originally, it's one story, okay? So here's some major themes. Even deeply flawed people can be great in God's hands. We see Saul does some amazing things early on. We see Samuel has his own flaws, but does amazing things when he submits his life to God. We see David, deeply flawed, but in the hands of God, does these amazing things, becomes this amazing man of God. Even David, specifically, what's wild about David is he's called a man after God's own heart before and after his life, which is wild because he does some crazy, terrible stuff at one point. He cheats on his wife. He commits adultery, kills that lady's husband so he can marry her. Bad things. But repents, restores with God, and God continues to use him. And so God prophesies beforehand, this will be a man after God's own heart. And then in the New Testament, they look back and think, yeah, he still is a man after God's own heart, which is wild to think. And so even deeply flawed people can do amazing things in God's hands. There are some amazing character studies in the book to learn from. And some we can be inspired by, and some you can be inspired to do the opposite of. There are some cautionary tales, and there are just some genuinely inspiring people. Samuel is just an incredible man who, as a child, grows up in God's house and hears the voice of God, and the priest Eli tells him, hey, next time you hear the voice, say, okay, God, here I am. What do you want me to do? And he does it as a child. And he grows up hearing the voice of God, submitting to the voice of God. What an incredible man to be inspired by. David, similar thing, a man after God's own heart. Despite serious flaws and mistakes, repents and gets right with God and lives with courage and conviction and leads people in such inspiring ways. I mean, you want your children reading about these men of God. Saul acts as a cautionary tale for us. He gives in to insecurity. It's one thing to have it, it's another thing to build your life on it. And he acts as kind of a foil to Samuel and David for us. There are also some minor characters, David's mighty men, just some inspiring stories of courage. And I'm reminded of C.S. Lewis's quote about why he wrote the book of the stories of Narnia. He says, hey, kids are going to grow up hearing about dragons in the world, so they might as well read about brave knights as well. And it's true. The world is crazy. Your kids are going to grow up, and at some point they're going to leave your house, and they're going to enter a crazy world where there's threats. There's all kinds of things coming after them, wanting to change the way that they live and all those things. And you want them growing up reading about brave men and women of God who live with courage, who make good sacrifices. And there's just some amazing stories. The question that you might ask reading this book is, what kind of a man or woman will you become? And so that's our Bible breakdown. Without further ado, I want to jump into a specific passage that helps us become a certain kind of a person, help us answer that question. What kind of a person will we become? And I want to look at Samuel chapter 4. This is early on, before David and before Saul. This is during the times of the judges. There's no king. And let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 4, 1 through 11. If you have your Bible, you can read this with me. I'm going to read out of the NLT here, just so I think it's a little softer, easier read for us. At that time, Israel was at war with the Philistines. Philistines are kind of like the stormtroopers. They're like the big bad guys, but their aim isn't that great. But still, if there's a lot of them, you're in trouble. The Israelite army was camped near Ebenezer, and the Philistines were at Aphek. The Philistines attacked and defeated the army of Israel, killing 4,000 men, so their aim was on that day. After the battle was over, the troops retreated to their camp, and the elders of Israel asked, why did the Lord allow us to be defeated by the Philistines? Now, this is a great question to ask. And if you are ever in a hard situation in your life, it is a very good idea, I highly recommend, pausing and asking God, okay, God, what am I missing here? What am I missing here? Now, God rarely explains why. The why question is maybe a tough question to ask. But it is a good idea to, when things aren't going well, to, okay, I need God's perspective here. What am I missing? God, what are you trying to do here? And so it appears at first, it seems like, hey, this is a great question to ask. I think, honestly, that's a big part of our problem as Americans. We're too busy. Even as, Christians, we're too busy doing things that we're too busy to pause and say, okay, wait, let me connect with God on this before I move forward. What am I missing something here? God, what do I want? I don't want to just move without you with me here. And so they paused and they asked that question. Then they said, let's bring the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Shiloh. If we carry it into battle with us, it will save us from our enemies. Now, alarms should be going off in your head right now. It will save us? What do you mean it? I don't know if you guys seen Indiana Jones and the Lost Ark. The Ark of the Covenant is this golden box that was originally in the temple, or was in the tabernacle, then in the temple, and God's presence would meet on top of it. In fact, the lid was called the mercy seat because God's presence would come and sit on it, where he met with the high priest once a year. And it's interesting, they started to associate this ark as if it were God itself. So you're reading this, you're like, it is a box. What is it going to do? How will it save you from anything? And so alarm bells should be going off. What's interesting is despite the fact that they appear to ask a great question, hey, what does God want to say to us? it doesn't seem like they wait for God to answer. In fact, it doesn't seem like they were actually asking God at all. Who were they asking? Themselves. They were asking each other, hey, Jimmy, you're just as stupid as I am. Why do you think God allowed this to happen? It's like when you only get advice from your peers. It's like, hey, man, they're stuck in the same things you're stuck in. What do you think they're going to help with? You know, they needed a higher perspective. They didn't ask God. They asked each other, hey, why do you think God let this happen? He said, I don't know, but I got an idea. Let's go get the golden box out. That'll help. It'll save us. I don't know if, AI use is really prevalent. I use different AI tools, and ChatGPT can be super helpful. But one of the dangers is they're finding that a lot of people use ChatGPT as a therapist. And the challenge with this is, while it might be able to give you helpful principles and tools and, kind of like a Google search, relay different frameworks and, information to you, it's not as good at assessing you. When you tell, hey, here are my problems, they've found that the longer you use it, ChatGPT really just repeats yourself back to you. It tells you things you want to hear or it thinks that you're already saying. And so it doesn't actually give you any sort of outside perspective when you try to get very personal in that way. And that's a little bit like what they're doing right now. They need an outside perspective, but they're just asking each other, hey, what did God do about this? That's a little bit like what worry is like that. In fact, you may have heard this famous phrase, I'm not sure who said it, but worry is simply praying to yourself. Instead of asking God, you're like, oh, what am I going to do about this? Oh, why is this happening? John, come on, think. John, what? And it's funny, when you're in that position, you generally don't come up with your best ideas in that position. Let's get that box out of the closet. I don't know. Let's just try something. Maybe what God is wanting you to do is, hey, pause. Let's get God's perspective here. Worry is praying to yourself. So they bring the ark. Now let's see what happens. So they sent men to Shiloh to bring the ark of the Lord, who is enthroned between the cherubim. Hophni and Phinehas, the sons of Eli, these are priests, were also there with the ark of the covenant. When all the Israelites saw the ark of the covenant, they thought, here we go. God is on our side now. We brought his shoebox into the camp. Their shout of joy was so loud, it made the ground shake. The Philistines start freaking out. What's going on? What's all the shouting about in the Hebrew camp? When they were told it was because the ark of the Lord had arrived, they panicked. The gods have come into their camp. They also have no clue about how God really operates either. This is a disaster. We've never had to face anything like this before. Help! Who can save us from these mighty gods of Israel? They are the same gods who destroyed the Egyptians with plagues when Israel was in the wilderness. Interesting. Word travels fast. They had heard the stories. They didn't really know God, but they'd heard these stories, which is interesting. Fight as never before, Philistines. If you don't, we will become the Hebrew slaves, just as they have been ours. Stand up like men and fight. Now what happens is the Philistines fought desperately, and guess what? Israel was defeated again. The slaughter was great. 3,000 Israelite soldiers died that day. The survivors turned and fled to their tents, and the ark of God was captured. And Hophni and Phinehas, the two sons of Eli, were killed. Now, why did they lose? I thought they had God on their side. They brought the Ark of the Covenant into battle with them. Why did they lose? Because they thought they could manage God. Here's the big idea I want to tell you is you can attempt to manage God and fail, or you can let God manage you, and things will go much better. You can attempt to manage God, and things will not go well for you, or you can allow God to manage you. Here's what I mean. I'm reminded of the golden calf in this story. They bring out the Ark of the Covenant, they shout with joy, and all of a sudden, their enemies are like, wait, what's going on? It reminds me of the golden calf. Moses is up on the mountain for 40 days, and he hears shouting, he hears partying, and he's like, wait, what's going on down there? He goes down there, and they've made these statues to represent God. Why would they do that? Now, I don't think that they just accidentally converted to paganism. I think what they were doing is they were trying to manage God. They thought, hey, God is a bit unmanageable. He's a little unpredictable. We don't really know what he's going to do. We don't know when he's going to do it. Like Moses has been up there forever. For all we know, he's dead. Like God brought us out of Egypt, that was great, but we don't really know what he's going to do next. It would be nice if we could predict what God is going to do. Well, let's make some golden calves, and let's just decide that that is the one who brought us out of Egypt. This is Yahweh, our gods, and whenever we need them, we can bring them out of the closet, and we can put them right there. And then when we don't want to be inconvenienced, we can put them back and kind of keep doing what we're doing. They were attempting to manage God. They thought, hey, God, we don't like the way you mess up our schedules and our business and our values, so we're going to bring you out when we want to bring you out. We'll let you bless us and bless the things we want you to bless, and then we'll put you back. I think sometimes we do this all kinds of ways. Sometimes, we can wrestle with questions, and sometimes, it's good to wrestle with questions. Sometimes I think what we're trying to do is inadvertently we're trying to manage God. There's a question a lot of times in charismatic circles is, hey, how does healing work, and why doesn't God heal everyone? Now, this is a great question to wrestle with, but sometimes it can, at the heart of it, what we're really looking for is a way to manage God. What we're really after is, hey, how can I guarantee that God will heal everyone every time I want him to? Sometimes that's what we're really looking for. And that's just not how it works. You can't just bring God out of the closet when you want him and then put him back when you don't need him. He's either God and you allow him to be God, or he's not. But there's no in between where you get to pick and choose. You following me here? I'm also reminded in Numbers, there's a story called the bronze serpent where they rebel against God, and God sends these snakes into the camp, these poisonous snakes, and a bunch of people die, and they say, God, okay, we're sorry for rebelling. What do you want us to do? And God says, hey, make a bronze serpent, put it up on this pole, and if you just look at it like in faith, then I will heal you. And I love this story because Jesus brings this up in John chapter 1, and he says, I am like that snake. I will be raised up, and if people just look at me in faith, I will heal their lives. It's amazing biblical crossover. But what's crazy is after the bronze serpent, God healed them, did a miracle. 700 years later, King Hezekiah had to destroy this bronze serpent because the people began worshiping it as if it were God. In fact, they gave it a name. They named it Nehushtan, which means the bronze thing. Very creative name. But they began to think that the method was the master. They began to think, hey, maybe we can control God. We want this physical thing, which is kind of why in one of the 10 Commandments is don't make an image of God. Why? Because we're tempted to try to use it to control God. It's easier to do that. Think about this question again. I asked you, hey, why didn't they ask God earlier, God, why are we losing right now? Why didn't they ask God? I think because it's easier to bring out a box than to ask God. It's easier. I mean, imagine they ask God, and God says, hey, actually, the reason I didn't go out with you in battle that time was, well, because you're all living in a way that really dishonors me. And so your whole society needs to change. You need some reform. And if you live a way that honors me, then I'll go in the next battle with you. Man, that's a hard ask. That's a lot of change involved. And so say, hey, how about we just go get that golden box? Let's just try that instead. I think that might be a little easier. Let's just see if that works. And they're using God like a good luck charm or a vending machine or a genie in a bottle. And they say, no, God, we don't want your help with that stuff. We don't want your help with the way we live. We just want your help with this battle. That's it. If we put 80 cents in the vending machine, push the buttons, that's all I'm asking. Now, how do we do this today? I think there's two ways we do this today. One is we keep God on a shelf, and two, we keep God in a box. Now, what do I mean by this? One, we keep God on a shelf until we need him. I call this Hail Mary Christianity. What's funny is Hail Mary is almost universally associated with football, not the Catholic Church anymore. You know, it's like, hey, when you're down deep and you have no other options, you try this last-ditch thing that probably isn't going to work, but you hope maybe it does. That's a lot of times the way we live our life. We put God on the shelf until it's our last option. And we just hope, God, please answer this prayer. I'll do anything. And you start making promises. You guys ever been there? God, if you come through, I'll become a monk. I'll become a missionary to China or something. And then God comes through, and then you're like, I don't know, China's not looking that great anymore. You guys been there? Sometimes I call this addiction Christianity. Addiction Christianity. It's you come to church once a month to get your spiritual fix. And you're up in the front and worship, you're just encountering God, you're sobbing, you got like ugly snot tears running down your face. You're like, this is amazing. And then the ministry team surrounds you and prays for you and encourages you and just speaks life over you. This is great. This is exactly what I needed to go back and keep doing exactly what I was doing for 4 more weeks. And then you crash and burn again. You're like, oh, I need my fix. I'll come back. My friends, that's not how God intended you to live. God doesn't want to be your junkie drug dealer, right? Hey, come back when you're in, dire straits again. That's not how it works. We were not designed to keep God on a shelf until we need him. God in his mercy will respond to prayers like that sometimes. God will respond to a Hail Mary, and there's some amazing testimonies many of us maybe have experienced where, man, I was at rock bottom, I cried out, and God responds to that. But God probably won't do it every time you do that. Why? Because he's trying to woo you into something deeper than Hail Mary addiction Christianity. He's trying to woo you into something a little more life-changing, a little more holistic in your life. I'm reminded of a story years ago. We got to be a part of this event with the sporting soccer team in Kansas City. They had a faith and family day, and a friend of ours helped organize it and was working with some of the athletes before the soccer game. They had some of the soccer players from the team share about their faith at this kind of private event in the stadium. And so we got to be there, and it was kind of funny. I felt for my friend. It was a painful thing for him because the captain of the soccer team at the time was supposed to share his testimony, share his story about how he believes in God and how faith is a big part of his soccer journey and things like that. And honestly, it was pretty evident that he was living in Hail Mary addiction Christianity, keeping God on the shelf, because my friend asked him, hey, what's like a Bible verse, that you're really inspired by? And he's like, I think, and it was just like really awkward, like couldn't think of anything. I was like, I think it's like, God helps those who help themselves. And my friend, who's like, this is in front of a bunch of people, so he's like trying to help this guy out. And he's like, oh, well, I noticed in your Instagram bio, you have, the scripture that goes like, God strengthens, and he's like trying to lead him. And he's like, no, I'm not familiar with that one. And he's like, it's, the one you put in your Instagram bio. And he's like, what's it again? And he had to like open up his Bible, read it to him. I was like, oh man, this is brutal. My friends, that is not the way God intends for us to live. To keep him on a shelf or treat him like a good luck charm, or sometimes we get maybe the cross tattoo and the Hebrew tattoo and whatever, and the cross necklace, and you just think, hey, I'm good because I have this thing. Now, it's not bad to have those things. They can remind us of God, point us to God. But if you're keeping that just to like, hey, I'm good because I got this thing, man, that's attempting to manage God. Now, we might keep God on a shelf, or you might keep God in a box. He's off the shelf, but he's limited to this one specific area of your life. This is where you let God shape one area, but not any others. God, I will let you into my living room, but don't you dare try to go up the stairs, right? God, I will let you shape my character, but I don't want you involved in my politics. Or maybe, God, I'll let you shape my politics, but I don't want you touching my marriage. I wonder how many men of us maybe. We've got 12 podcasts on rotation. You could probably tell me the 10 cabinet members of Kyrgyzstan. You have no idea what your wife's love language is. My friend, you've kept God in a box. Let God out of the box into every area of your life. Now, the result of this is only bad things. Israel loses. I can't help but wonder if the Israelites go home from that battle talking about the church hurt they just experienced. God, we did what you wanted, and you let us lose. We talked about Yahweh. We are associated with Yahweh. We even had your stuff with us. The Philistines think that we're good Israelites. Why did you let us lose? And God is like, but you just didn't do like the one thing I actually asked you to do. And so you can have the appearance of Christianity. I wonder if a lot of our church hurt that people are talking about is really just this. You're keeping God in a box and then wondering why he's not doing what you want him to do. So my friends, because he's not a genie in a bottle. That's not how this works. If you attempt to manage God, it won't go well for you, but you can let God manage you, and it'll go much better. Now, I want to share how this story ends, because this is really fascinating. In the next chapter in 1 Samuel 5, it says, after the Philistines captured the ark, they took it from the battleground at Ebenezer to the town of Ashdod. They carried the ark of God into the temple of their god, named Dagon. They placed it beside an idol of Dagon. So they put it in the temple, and then they just kind of leave it there. It's interesting. Both people seem to think the ark of God is like a trophy or a good luck charm. Hey, if we just add this to our temple, that'll add the power of Yahweh to us. Here's what's wild, and this is why this is like Stranger Things and Indiana Jones. I mean, combined, this is just amazing. But when the citizens of Ashdod went to see it the next morning, they thought, hey, maybe there's going to be like a power-up. You know, maybe our temple will be glowing, adding the power of this additional god or something. Dagon, the idol, the statue, had fallen on his face to the ground in front of the ark of the Lord. Whew. Isn't that amazing? Now, were there people involved? No. I don't think any Israelites snuck into the temple. This was just pure Yahweh on his own. God's like, I don't need any of you guys. I make this false god bow to me all on my own. What's wild is this God that appeared to be defeated. The Philistines, man, we just swept these Israelites. Their God must not be as powerful as ours. This God who appeared to be defeated was very much in control the entire time. And so he makes this statue bow down. Now, what's funny is they put him back up. They put the statue back on his feet. And they come back the next morning. The same thing happened. Dagon had fallen on his face, but this time the head and hands were broken off, lying in the doorway. Only the trunk of his body was left intact. That is why to this day neither the priests of Dagon nor anyone who enters the temple will step on its threshold. They're like, hey, step on a crack, break Dagon's back. You know? They're like, a little superstitious here. I'm reminded of, I'll step out of Star Wars and into the Avengers universe. You guys, Avengers fans. You guys, the scene where the Hulk meets Loki in that, in the skyscraper, right? Where the Hulk runs at him and he's like, hey, don't you know I'm a god? What does the Hulk do? Grabs him by the feet. And he's like, puny god. I think that's basically what just happened here. It's like the Philistines are like, hey, don't you know Dagon is a god? And Yahweh's like, really? Puny god. Like, I didn't even need any of my people to do anything. Just me being here breaks your God into pieces. Now, I'm also reminded of Jesus, who stands before Pilate. And Pilate is like, hey, why don't you answer my questions? Don't you know I have the power to kill you? And Jesus is like, you don't have any power over me. I'm only here because I let you bring me in. It's a little bit like Yahweh right here. He's like, don't get it twisted. Just because I allowed my ark to be placed in your temple doesn't mean you actually have any power. I allowed this to happen for a reason. So they start freaking out because it goes even worse. Then the Lord's heavy hand struck the people of Ashdod and the nearby villages with plagues of tumors. When the people realized that was happening, they cried out, we cannot keep the ark of God here any longer. He is against us. And then they make this very interesting point here. As just godless pagans, they recognize the power of Yahweh. They say, hey, we will all be destroyed along with Dagon, our God. So they call together the rulers and they say, hey, what should we do? And eventually they send it back. They just hook it up to some cows and they point it toward Israel and they send it back. This is wild. This is what happens when you let God off the shelf and out of the box. What were the Israelites wanting? They wanted to defeat the Philistines and ultimately defeat the God of the Philistines. It didn't work when they attempted to manage God, keeping him on the shelf, keeping him in the box. That didn't accomplish what they wanted. The only way is when you stop trying to manage God and you let God manage you. It's the only way. But when you do, here's what's amazing is a lot of times, we preach and we talk about, hey, do this, do that. And people are like, man, I don't know, this can feel a little legalistic, like you're just wanting me to do more for God and things. No. That's not what we're after. We're saying, hey, if you just let God do what he wants in your life, this is what he can do. The power of God will break through. Whatever is holding you back. Man, you might be stuck in addiction. You might be stuck feeling like, man, what's my purpose in my life? You might be stuck like, man, what's my career supposed to be? We're having a hard time here financially, whatever it is. God has the power to do whatever it is that you need him to do. But he's not going to let you keep him in the box of just solving that one little problem and moving on with your life. If you stop attempting to manage God and manage the process, I think sometimes we try to manage the process as disciples. Hey, God, I will let you transform my life if it looks like this. God, I will give my life to you if you let me marry a Swedish supermodel. And God's like, shut up and get in the car. Like, you don't even know what you want. Like, don't tell me. Just let me do what I want to do and just go with it. And so many of the stories in the Old Testament and the New Testament are God trying to convince the people, hey, if you will just go with me here and just stop asking so many questions, just do what I'm telling you to do. Things will be so amazing, you won't even know. And I've seen that in my own life. I know many of you have seen this in your own life. When you just stop trying to control God, you stop trying to control the process, and you just say yes and allow God to do what he wants, oh, man, it goes so much better. And so I wonder what this is looking like for you. Maybe there are things you're trying to control the situation. Hey, I will come to church, but I'm not getting involved with these people. Hey, stop trying to control God. Just let him do what he wants. Show up to the things he's wanting you. Get involved. Meet some people. Connect with people. Hey, God, I'll pray a prayer. I'm not getting baptized in front of everybody. That's embarrassing. I don't think I can handle it. God said, hey, who asked you? Who asked you? Who's in charge here anyways? When you pray the prayer to give your life to Jesus, you're giving your life to Jesus, which means, Jesus, I'm doing the things you want me to do. So stop trying to manage God and let God manage you. This weekend, the president made a declaration to the government in Iran saying this historical phrase, unconditional surrender. Now, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of Iran and Israel and all of that, but the phrase is really interesting. It comes from Grant in the Civil War. The General Grant, who ended the Civil War, freed the slaves, all that stuff. To end the Civil War, he used the phrase, hey, we will not surrender on any conditions to the South. The South said, we'll surrender if you let us keep our slaves. We'll surrender if you kind of help us economically. We'll surrender. And he said, no. Unconditional surrender. Like, you have nothing to offer us. Lay everything down. We will now do what we want to restructure things. I think that's what God is putting in front of us. Stop trying to put conditions on your salvation. Stop trying to put conditions on your discipleship process. Stop trying to put conditions. Well, I'll come to community only if people treat me like this certain way. Stop trying to put conditions on it. Unconditional surrender. God is the same God now that he was in the temple of Dagon. He doesn't need us. He doesn't need me. He doesn't need you. Now, he wants to use us, but we've just got to admit, hey, God, I don't really have anything to offer when it comes to this relationship. Just use me however you want to. And so I wonder how this is hitting you. And I want to invite the worship team up, and we're going to move into a ministry time. You can attempt to manage God and fail, or you can let God manage you and win, really. Which will you choose? Let me pray for us. God, thank you for everyone here. God, I pray that you would speak to us and lead us forward as disciples of Jesus. God, where are we attempting to control you and manage you? God, I pray that you would bring that to light in us and give us the courage to repent. God, I give my insecurity to you. God, I give my fear of failure that causes me maybe to want to control the outcome. God, I just surrender that to you in Jesus' name. My fear of what other people think of me and trying to manage my image. Well, I can't share my faith because I'll look like an idiot, and I'm trying to manage God. When God would say, hey, if you just obey me, I will handle the outcome. Don't worry about it. What would it look like for me to with reckless abandon, lay everything down and let God have his way in my life?